What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking About Baseball. Today, I will be doing my Ace Rankings, and this is the first day of the 12 Days of Christmas rankings. This series is originally made by Giraffe Neck Mark. Obviously, he's a much more popular YouTuber. I attempted to do this last year. It did not work. This year is the first year I'm doing it. I will be ranking every single position and starting today with aces, not just starting pitchers. There will be free agents, so there won't only be 30 players. Today there's 32. But this is only aces, so for example, for the Mariners, only Luis Castillo is on this list. In a top 30 starting pitchers list, Logan Gilbert and George Kirby would probably also be on here, and some of these guys at the bottom definitely wouldn't. But since it is an ace ranking, it is the top pitcher for each team ranked, and I do have two free agents, like I said, to make it 32 players. So anyway, let's get started at number 32, and that will be Kyle Freeland. He's just really an okay pitcher for the Rockies. Obviously not the very good pitcher. He will not be an ace on pretty much any other team on the league. I think he's a really solid 3 or 4 starter, but to be the guy you're throwing out there for opening day, I just don't think he's all that good. He's a big ground ball pitcher rather than a strikeout guy, but sometimes also those fly balls, and I'm sure Coors definitely affects him. Next up at number 31, we have the Royals' Brady Singer. He was coming off of a really promising 2022, but 2023, everything just went downhill. He was absolutely terrible last year. I do think he can still be a really good pitcher, but as of right now, it's just not there for me, and that's why he's ranked at 31. Also, before I continue going, I think it should be said that pitchers that are injured will not be on this list unless they are unless it's more of a short-term injury. For example, Jacob deGrom, not on this list, but other players who were maybe injured to end the year will be on this list if they're still projected to be the ace next season. Also, these rankings are mostly based off of last year and what I think they'll do going into next year. Track record is like partially some of it, but most of it is last year and what I think going into next year. Anyway, kicking off our top 30, we have the Athletics' Paul Blackburn. I think he's just a completely fine pitcher. I don't think he's really an ace type of pitcher. That's why he's the ace of the Oakland Athletics, because they will never have an ace type of pitcher because they never spend any money. I think he's just a fine pitcher, like Kyle Freeland, just a 3 or 4 on someone's team, but definitely not a great ace. Next up, we have the Angels' Reed Detmers. He had a really promising season last year. He is now projected to be their ace now that Shohei is gone and Patrick Sandoval kind of had a rough season. I think that Reed Detmers could definitely be the ace of this team. He was a very promising prospect and last year looked very good in the major leagues. I just need to see more from him as that was really only one good year, and so I just want him to build off of that success and then he'll see himself higher on this list next year. Next up at 28 is the Nationals' Josiah Gray. He's coming off of an All-Star appearance, but really the only reason he was an All-Star is because the Nationals are so bad. He didn't have a terrible season. He has really good strikeout stuff, but he is like most pitchers that have good strikeout stuff. The home runs and walks definitely do get him quite a bit, and that is why he's ranked lower here. But he's still extremely young, and I think could be an ace in the future of a rebuilding Nationals team. Next up at number 27, we have Walker Buehler, the Dodgers' current projected ace. They did just sign Shohei Ohtani, but also that rotation is not looking any better with that signature. They have been in talks about Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who could have already signed at this point because I'm filming this video a day in advance. Also, like I just mentioned, Yoshinobu Yamamoto will not be on this list because he's from Japan, so I don't really know how he's going to do yet. So I just decided to keep him off of this list for that reason. But Anyway, Walker Buehler is so low for one main reason, and that is injuries. In 2021, he was a top 3 Cy Young candidate, and in 2022, it was looking like it was going to be that way again until he got injured, which would end up requiring Tommy John surgery, and he would miss half of the 2022 season and all of last year, and he is now projected to lead a starting rotation that is looking like him, Bobby Miller, and guys like Ryan Pepiot, which I do not think is a very great bottom of the rotation. I think there's definitely free agents that the Dodgers can and will sign, as they have the deepest pockets, and as the report came out, they're only paying Shohei Ohtani $2 million a season. At number 26, we have another guy who's very similar to Josiah Gray in my opinion, and that is Hunter Greene. He has better strikeouts than Josiah Gray, who I'm pretty much just going to be using as his comparison. but he also does allow more home runs, and I think Hunter Greene just has electric stuff. Hopefully Nick Lodolo will be able to bounce back and be a good number 2 starter for Cincinnati. They are looking for pitching, so pretty soon here, Hunter Greene might not even be their ace anymore, but I think he's a great young pitcher that could most likely win a Cy Young in the future. That is how talented I think he is, but right now, I'm going to have him at 26. At number 25, this might be slightly low, but there's a lot of good pitchers on this list, and that will be Tariq Skubal. He's had a couple of really good seasons, but another guy who's just kind of tainted by injuries. He didn't really pitch much all of last year, but when he did pitch, he looked very good, and I think he has a lot of promise going into next year to be one of the top 10 pitchers in the American League. I just really need to see it before I believe it, and that's why Tariq Skubal currently is at number 25. Next up is another guy who I just need to see some more talent from, and that is Mitch Keller. All of his career, he has looked absolutely terrible and not like the highly touted prospect everyone thought he would be. But this year, he looked much better. He definitely ended the season pretty rough, but I think Mitch Keller can be a top leading pitcher in that Pirates rotation and continue to be their ace, which of course that is what he is now. I think he could eventually lead this team to a playoff run if they're ever able to get back to that status. Next up is the Chicago White Sox Dylan Cease at number 23. Dylan Cease is definitely coming off of a rough season, but I think, like I said earlier, we're keeping track of the track record, and that is what is mainly keeping him up here. In 2022, he had a 2.2 ERA and looked absolutely nasty. A lot of people would argue that it's the walks that made him worse this year, but that is not true at all. His ERA is mainly ballooned up to a terrible White Sox defense, and I think that's the main reason that he really wasn't looking good last year. I think if the White Sox defense can improve a little bit, which it already technically has with an upgrade from Tim Anderson to Paul DeJong, I think Dylan Cease will have a better season this year, and I think he could easily be a front runner in the Cy Young in the future, but coming off of a kind of bad season, I just want to see him perform really well to move him up in this list. At number 22 is Chris Sale. This is probably going to be his last year on this list. He is just an amazing pitcher, but he's definitely getting older, and obviously the injuries are following him. Ever since 2019, he's had an injury every single season, but while he's on the mound, he's still Chris Sale, partially of the past. His talent has definitely been declining as the injuries pile up, which is why he's just consistently dropped from a lot of people's lists of ace rankings. But I do still think he can be a competent pitcher, as pretty much every MLB pitcher is. I think he can be above average slightly, but I don't think he'll have a great season and will most likely be out of the ace role for any team after next year. At number 21, I have Jesus Luzardo. Sandy Alcantara will not be pitching next year. It's either going to be Luzardo or Yuri Perez, and with Yuri Perez being so young, I think they will give it to Jesus Luzardo, even though he's also incredibly young. Jesus Luzardo had a breakout season last year. He looked absolutely amazing all season long, and it never stopped, unlike guys like Mitch Keller, who his hot start did kind of trail off at the end. But I think that Jesus Luzardo will end up being a top pitcher in the league, and in maybe 2-3 years, the Marlins will be an extreme playoff contender, maybe even a World Series contender, if they are able to keep guys like Jazz Chisholm. And if they have a rotation of Jesus Luzardo, Sandy Alcantara, and Yuri Perez, that would be absolutely nasty for the Marlins, maybe even the top 3 in baseball in a couple years. But obviously, like I said, Alcantara is not pitching. He would probably be a little bit higher than him, even coming off of a bad season. But anyway, I think Jesus Luzardo is at 21. Starting off for our top 20 is the Padres' Joe Musgrove. It's kind of undecided who's going to be their ace currently. It could be him, it could be Yu Darvish, maybe even Michael King, who they just got in the Juan Soto deal. But I do think it'll end up being Joe Musgrove. He definitely had a rough season last year, easily his worst with the Padres. But he's had a couple good years with the Padres, and obviously in the past. I do think he'll be able to rebound next year, but he's getting older. Injuries were a big thing of his season last year. I do still think he'll be a top-level pitcher, but injuries are definitely a concern, and that's why he's dropped to number 20. At number 19 is Orioles ace Kyle Bradish. He looked outstanding last year. Once again, the concern with a lot of these guys who were really good last year but aren't that high is that I've only seen it one time from him. Once again, I just need to see it again, and if he builds on that success and gets even better, he could even be in the top 10 of this list next year. He was absolutely lights out last year. He wasn't great in the playoffs as the Orioles only played 2 games and he pitched in game 2. but I think he can still be an absolutely wonderful pitcher for Baltimore and somebody they need to build on in that rough rotation because their pitching was definitely their problem last year. At number 18 is the Guardians' Shane Bieber. I don't really know how much longer he'll be on the Guardians, but he obviously won the AL Cy Young in a shortened 2020 season, and it's not shortened because of injury. Everyone knows why it's shortened. Since then, he's been dealing with injuries, but still been a really solid pitcher, especially last year he dealt with injuries. I really do think he's going to truly rebound next year. I think he'll have an ERA below 4. Obviously, this is all what I'm thinking, but I think that Shane Bieber will be a really good pitcher next year, and I mainly think that because I think he's going to get out of Cleveland, he's going to start getting run support and start feeling more confident on the mound, and I think there's a very small chance he plays for the Cleveland Guardians in 2024. At number 17 is the second-year player now, Kodai Senga. He's coming off of a really good rookie season, which obviously he played in Japan for quite a while, but he looked outstanding last year. He dominated a lot of the teams he faced, which is really promising for a rookie. He would have won Rookie of the Year if Corbin Carroll didn't exist, and Kodai Senga is one of the best Japanese pitchers in the league, probably going to be number 3 behind Shohei, who isn't going to be pitching next year, but Yoshinobu Yamamoto is also better than him. But Kodai Senga is just an absolute demon with his forkball. It is absolutely nasty. I've seen it in person. It's gross. Kodai Senga, just one of the best pitchers in the league, but another guy who I've only seen it one time. Obviously, he pitched very well in Japan, and I think he's going to continue to be a great ace for this Mets team that's kind of in a retool rebuild stage right now. At number 16 is Tyler Glasnow of the Rays, another guy who I do not think will be pitching for the Rays come next year, but he has been outstanding his entire career. The main reason he's down here is really only one thing, is injuries. He has never pitched over 120 innings pitched in any season of his career, but when he is pitching, he has looked absolutely amazing. Ever since he got traded to the Rays, he has been one of the best pitchers in the league while he's actually pitching. He ended this season great as he started the season, of course, on the injured list and didn't pitch until about mid-season, but he had about a 3.5 ERA this year, and he is just one of the nastiest pitchers. He's a huge guy. I think he's about 6'6", and he just dominates you while you're at the plate. Once again, though, his only problem is injuries. Next up at number 15 is the brand new Cardinal, and that is Sonny Gray. I think this is a really nice signature for the Cardinals. He's definitely going to be their ace for the next year for sure, but they have him on a 3-year deal. He's definitely getting paid a lot with $25 million. You may be wondering why he's so low coming off of a season where he had a 2.79 ERA, and my main concern is age, and also that was his best season by far before that time. He hadn't looked super good before that last season, but last season obviously he looked amazing. That is why he's at this stage right now, and I think that Sonny Gray can be a great ace for the Cardinals. I just don't know how well he's going to be able to perform as he's going to turn 35 soon. At number 14 is the ace of the Chicago Cubs, and that is Justin Steele. He's coming off of a wonderful season and is another one of those guys where he kind of tailed off at the end. This might be kind of high and kind of biased for him, but he had a wonderful season last year. This isn't really his first time doing it. In 2022 and only about 20 starts, he was also outstanding for the Cubs. But this year, I think he's going to have to take on a bigger role, as this is the first year where he's really expected to be the ace of the Cubs. I do think he'll be able to take it on, as they might even be able to trade for someone or sign someone like Blake Snell or guys that I mentioned earlier like Tyler Glasnow or Shane Bieber. I think those players could also definitely come to the Cubs, but I think Justin Steele is ready to take on this ace workload, and I think could easily be in the Cy Young conversation next year. Next up is a guy who is just in the Cy Young conversation, and that is Logan Webb. He will be at number 13. He is the Giants' best player by a ton. They really do need to get a star in free agency if they want to be good next season. They have a new manager coming in as Bob Melvin, but this isn't about the Giants. This is about Logan Webb. Logan Webb is one of the nastiest pitchers out there. He might be kind of short, but he has a lot of power in that shorter stature, and He just overpowers a lot of guys. In 2021, when the Giants won 106 games, he was lights out, and he has not stopped since then. He is definitely their ace, far and away, and I think he will be their ace for a very long time. He recently got signed to a 5-year extension, and I think they'll probably extend him again after that. He's pretty much the new Madison Bumgarner of San Francisco. Obviously, there's a lot of differences there, but I'm pretty much just saying he's the new ace in San Francisco, and he's very good. And number 12 is Justin Verlander. He's coming off of kind of an iffy season for him. Obviously, it's still a great season because an iffy season for Justin Verlander is still well below average. He is coming... In 2022, obviously, he won the AL Cy Young. Then he signed with the Mets and got traded before he even completed 1 full year. The Astros are paying him a lot of money, and he's also 40 years old. That's my biggest concern with him. Coming off of the 2 seasons he just had, he would probably be in the top 5 if he was not this old. I'm just very concerned. He had some injuries last year. I'm just concerned with how his body is definitely, you can see it beginning to break down. I think that he's still a great pitcher, and that's why he's in the top 12 at 12. I think he's just going to go lower and lower and lower until he's off the list because obviously he's getting very old. And number 11 is Pablo Lopez. He did just lose his tag teammate Sonny Gray, but I think he's ready to be the true ace of the Twins. It was kind of between him and Sonny Gray last year. He is the one who ended up starting opening day after getting traded from the Marlins, but I think Pablo Lopez is just a great strikeout pitcher and also isn't really bad at anything else. He does allow quite a few hits sometimes, but he has some of the nastiest stuff in the league, and obviously he holds the record for the most strikeouts to start a game. Pablo Lopez is a really nice ace, and he's still relatively young, and I think the Twins can build around him in their rotation for a lot of years to come, and they're coming off of a playoff appearance, and I would not be surprised if they make it again next year, and most likely win that division as the AL Central is garbage. Beginning our top 10 will be Jordan Montgomery. He is not currently on a team as he's a free agent, but he looked amazing for the Rangers last year. He was good all year, obviously not the whole season with the Rangers as he was with the Cardinals. Right before the trade deadline, his value actually kind of went down as he had quite a few bad starts. But he looked good all season for the Cardinals, who were struggling, and the Rangers, especially for the Rangers once he was really in the playoff race, and even better once he got to the playoffs. He was a great playoff pitcher for the Rangers, but he wasn't the best one on that playoff team as he's still yet to come. And Jordan Montgomery will be getting a 9-figure contract in free agency, if I had to guess, and he definitely deserves it. I do think he'll be going back to Texas and be their number 2 starter behind the guy who will be at number 8, and we'll talk about him in a second. But before we go to number 8, we have to go to number 9, and that is the Phillies' Zach Wheeler, another guy who's kind of getting up there in age. This is his last year with the Phillies. They already brought back Aaron Nola and are reportedly looking for even more starting pitching, but Zach Wheeler is definitely the ace of that rotation. He has great strikeout stuff and is just an absolute dog on the mound, especially when you get into the playoffs. He dominated the Braves in the playoffs and even had a really good start against the Diamondbacks, who ended up going to the World Series. Despite a rough start for the Phillies and Zach Wheeler last year, he still had an absolutely amazing season, and I would not be surprised if he does that yet again this year, although he is now 34, and I think age could come with injuries, which is a slight concern, but I don't really think it'll bother him much. And number 8 is the guy who I was just hinting at, and that is Nathan Eovaldi. He had an elite regular season until he got injured. When he came back, he wasn't really looking like the guy he was before July, but he still had a really nice season despite that rough end, and even though he ended pretty bad, he came back in the playoffs, and it did not matter how he ended the regular season. He went 5-0 in the playoffs, and he carried this Rangers team to a World Series. Obviously, it wasn't only him, as they had a star-studded roster, and they're projected to improve with getting even more free agents this year, and the Rangers are now considered a top AL contender, even though they weren't even supposed to go above 500 last year. And I think Nathan Eovaldi will be ready to lead this rotation, and by 2024, it'll be him, Jacob deGrom, and maybe, like I said, Jordan Montgomery, as I do think the Rangers will re-sign him. At number 7 is the Mariners' Luis Castillo. I talked about him earlier in this video, and he is just an absolutely amazing pitcher. Unfortunately, he was not able to lead his team to the playoffs last year, and there's one reason he's above him, and we'll obviously get to that later. But right now, Luis Castillo, that is who we're talking about, he has a nasty changeup, and he's definitely the ace of this Mariners rotation. There's 2 other guys ready behind him, and that is probably the best top 3 rotation pitchers in the league right now, in him, George Kirby, and Logan Gilbert. One of them's supposed to get traded, but anyway, Luis Castillo can lead any team to the playoffs unless you don't have any talent around you, also known as when he was with the Reds. But now that he's on the Mariners, I think he'll be ready to make a big playoff run next year. The Mariners have only gotten worse this offseason, but I think that's just because they're gearing up to get someone big like Matt Chapman or Cody Bellinger. At number 6 is Corbin Burnes, another guy on this list who I do not think will be on his team come next year, joining the list of Tyler Glasnow and Shane Bieber. I think Corbin Burnes is just an absolutely amazing pitcher. He's got a great sinker, cutter, and slider, and obviously more pitches he can use. He's been great in Milwaukee for the last 3 years, although my Cubs destroy him on opening day every year. Didn't really need to mention that, but obviously I'm a Cubs fan, kind of had to. Corbin Burnes is just one of the best pitchers in the league. I think he's just a really solid guy to have at the top of your rotation. And even though he is getting older, he still has 2 years left until he's a free agent. And I think that he will still be one of the best pitchers in the league in 2 years and for many years to come. At number 5, we have Kevin Gausman. He's coming off of 2 seasons with the Blue Jays where he looked absolutely elite. He was one of the best pitchers in the league last year and continued to build on that, even though he was really the only guy at the top of the rotation this year. Jose Barrios was alright, but Alek Manoah obviously completely lost his status of a top-level pitcher. Kevin Gausman is definitely the guy at the top of the rotation in Toronto, and even though they didn't get Shohei, I think they can use that $600 million they offered him to make their team even better. Based on what they were doing to try to get Ohtani, it seems like this team is going all in, which is going to be a problem because they're most likely not going to be able to re-sign Vladdy or Bo Bichette if they go out and get someone big. But I think it might be worth it because I feel like that team is just a piece or 2 away from a World Series run. At number 4 is the recent World Series pitcher, Zach Gallen. He has looked outstanding for 3 years in a row now and has obviously just gotten better and better each year. He finished second in the Cy Young race in the NL to the guy who's right ahead of him, and he just looked outstanding all regular season. In the playoffs, he definitely faltered a little bit because he didn't get the memo to not throw fastballs right down the middle to Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, but he's still a great pitcher, and I think come the playoffs next year, when the Diamondbacks most likely make it again, I think he will have a much better postseason if he just learns to stop throwing pitches right down the middle to the best hitters on the team. To start off the top 3 is another free agent, and that is NL Cy Young winner Blake Snell. He's coming off of a great season with the Padres, and I think he's ready for a $300 million contract. It's rumored that he might go to the Mariners, which would make the best pitching rotation in MLB history, but I don't really know if the Mariners are willing to pay him that much. I've heard that he might go to my Chicago Cubs, which I would absolutely love. But anyway, we need to talk about what he did last year. He was one of the worst pitchers in the league when it comes to walks, but he is so good otherwise that he completely got rid of all those guys on base whenever it happened. He was with the Rays in 2018 when he won his last Cy Young and is one of few pitchers in MLB history to win a Cy Young in both leagues. I think Blake Snell could win even a third one if he continues to build on his recent success. Even though he had some kind of just okay years in between the two, I think that he's able to win another one, and I don't think it'll take him 4 years again. I don't think that it'll take him 4 years in between again. I think Blake Snell is going to be an ace of whatever team that signs him. 2, we have Spencer Strider. He is the Braves' ace, obviously, and the main reason he isn't at number 1 is because he just allows too many home runs. The home runs are the main reason his ERA was ballooned up to 3.5, and also the main reason he was not in the top 3 finalists for the NL Cy Young. He just strikes out a ton of batters, which is obviously the best way to get guys out, but like I said, his home runs are way too much and way too high. He definitely has struggled slightly in the playoffs and given up home runs or big hits in big moments. I do think that does definitely hurt him a little bit, but he's still a top pitcher in the league, and even though he wasn't in the top 3 in the Cy Young because of the higher ERA, I think that if he lowers his ERA down to a mid-2 or even a high-2 ERA, he should be blown away in the Cy Young race because of how many strikeouts he gets. At number 1, it is Garrett Cole from the Yankees. He is the best pitcher in the league. It used to be him versus DeGrom for the best. Now that DeGrom is gone, it is undoubtedly him. Also, now that he has won his first Cy Young, and there's really one main thing that he changed. His whole career, he's been a big strikeout guy, not really a big walk guy, but there was one thing that he always faltered at, and that was giving up way too many home runs, and he limited home runs much more this year. He cut his home runs per 9 almost in half from 2022, and that is obviously why he was so much better this year. I think Garrett Cole will continue to just get better and better, and now he's on a team that features Juan Soto and Aaron Judge on offense, and as long as they don't get injured, I don't think run support will be a concern for him, as sometimes last year it was. Anyway, that is the end of my Ace rankings. There will be a video every single day for the next 11 days after this, finalizing with the last video on Christmas Day. I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, this whole series is credited to Giraffe Neck Mark. You can go check out his channel with the link in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you tomorrow, and obviously all the days after that, with more rankings.